refugees, and you guys will know why I'm saying that. But it's a great honor to be here. And one thing, apart from the fear, I'm very, very happy to see this room because I've done this many years in the past with Jody and the rest of the team. And anytime I came, I used to point out something from the first time I walked in the room, and that is, it's almost everybody is white and almost everybody is male. But this is different. This is very impressive. I see people that look like me. I see people that are of different genders, not only white, male. So this is a big promise for the city of Providence. And probably, I hope the other cities will be like this too. So this is basically why I say I'm impressed, because it's different from the other cities, from the other years that I've been around. But generally, I'm scared of police. You guys greeted it is very great. There's a lot of level of discipline, which is really impressive. As a refugee, this is something that always comes to mind. Always as an individual of color, as a refugee, somebody who has a lot of identities. I always say, I can't really remember, but I'm a black male, I'm a Muslim, I'm a refugee, I'm an immigrant, I'm a father of 2 black boys. So there's a lot of identities that comes into mind when I'm interacting with law enforcement or police, whether you look like me or don't look like me, but those are things that come to mind. We're talking about a matter of life and death here. We are black male and getting shot and killed by police, especially police that don't look like them. So these are things that I think this conversation is important so that we talk about it. You'll be going out there in the streets with guns, with power. Whether you know it or not, you have a lot of power over people in the communities. Providence, there has been a controversy recently about police. Somebody may think they might have been doing their job by calling black kids animals, or maybe spraying kids. But those communities also may think the police were overbearing in their power. So those are things why I think this conversation is important. So just a quick introduction. I'm the founder of the Refugee Dream Center, which is a small organization that does post-resettlement for refugees. And when we say refugees, I think it's important to explain, because refugees, they are a small group of immigrants that come into this country through the State Department. They are brought in by the government of the United States. They usually have papers they're brought in, but they have a lot of challenges. These are people from wars, victims or survivors of rape and torture, violence, extreme levels of violence. Some of you may have participated in military operations. You might have seen what war looks like outside the war. That's what refugees are. They flee their countries most of the time unprepared, leave everything behind. I went through that same journey myself. I was a young reporter in Gambia, in West Africa. Small country. Many people in Africa even don't know what Gambia is. You talk to them about Gambia, they say, oh, is that in East Africa? Is it near Kenya? No, it's south. It's near Senegal. Because it's very small, very, very insignificant in terms of size and population. So a lot of human rights violations happened there, and the world did not know about it. We had a dictator for 22 years. And as a young reporter, I witnessed a lot of activities of torture, kidnapping, violence, extreme levels of violence, some done to me. I was taken to a military camp and tortured at some point. And know who did that? People who look like you, not in color, but in uniform and war, police or military. People in guns, in boots and guns, and equipment that is enforced by the state, that are doing these things in the name of the government, in the name of the state, in the power that they have over civilians. So luckily for me, to cut a long story short, I became a refugee. I fled Gambia in 2006, went to Senegal, which is closest to my country. It was not safe. I had to flee to Ghana. Luckily for me, the US government, through the embassy in Ghana, processed my papers to become a refugee. I was in a camp for just 1 year. Luckily for me, I was just 1 year. I'm here with my colleague who's interning with me this summer at the Refugee Dream Center. He came as a refugee 5 years ago. He was born in a camp. He's never been to his country for it. I'm just trying to say how long people stay in camps, sometimes all their lives. You flee, your parents flee and you're born in a camp. And then luckily, you may be resettled in the US, or you may never be resettled. There are over 70 million refugees across the world. Only about less than one, probably about 50, less than 0.5%, less than half a percent get resettled to third countries. And the US is usually that takes the highest number. And this year we're taking about 62,000, about 300 to 400 come to Rhode Island. And that's where my role comes in, to help you understand the work, the identity, and some of the cultural interactions that you may come across working with these people, because there are about 400 people coming every year, most of them coming to the city that you'll be serving. And you may see them, some of them may look like you. Some of them may look very white, like Syrian refugees. Some of them may look very black, like Gambian, Rwandan, Congolese refugees. Some of them may look mixed, like Somali and other refugees. So literally they are like the typical American identity, a mix of people from different backgrounds and races. And there are also immigrants, people who come from all over. But there are people who plan their journeys, coming as students or tourists, or maybe their parents brought them here. So all of you may have, some of you may have an immigrant story. I don't think there's any American that doesn't have an immigrant story. It's just a matter of what time it happened. So those are the things that we talk about. But some of the things that happen within the identities of these immigrants or refugees is one, for instance, there is this sense of fear of the gun. And that is because of the past trauma that people might have experienced. When you become an officer in the community, you come in and say, let's play basketball with the community policy. That comes from top down, because that's what every community police does. They do basketball, do something. Maybe there's something they call gente, for example. Naming ceremony. Somebody has a baby 7 days after, it's a big party in the community. Maybe in the basement or in the living room of one of them, everybody comes. That can also be community policy. It cannot be basketball in the street with police officers. I'm just trying to see that cultural variation. Just look at all the alternative things that you can do get involved in the community, get participate in the community. A lot of people may not understand. You look at body language, that's what they teach you, but then it's from one perspective, from a Western perspective. Body language in one perspective is different from the body language in another perspective. If we meet, or when we meet, I can see everybody right now looking at my eyes, right into my eyes. In my culture, it's very likely half of the group, or more than half of this group here, will be looking somewhere. But they're listening, they're paying attention, they're respectful. It's just the opposite, to show sense of respect to somebody. So we stop somebody like me in the streets. Yeah, police officer is asking ID. What are the three things? ID, insurance, and registration, insurance, and what? Yeah, those three. And then you see somebody is maybe shaking, literally shaking. It still happens to me 14 years down here. 14 years in America. Founder of an organization that serves thousands a year across the state. Went to school to a level of doctorate. A police officer stops me, I'm still shaking because I'm just scared. So when I'm shaking doesn't mean I'm selling drugs or I have something to hide. It's just because of my past trauma. Police or people in uniform, paramilitary in Gambia almost killed me. I have torture marks, violent wound marks from torture. And I was declared a wanted person and soldiers chasing me with guns. I'm just still scared of that. I'm trying, but I'll shake. If you think that is a reason to shout out of the car, hands or whatever, you're creating more problem. I might take off, and that'll be more, it will just maybe get out of hand. Or you see, you're talking to me, I'm not doing eye contact. I may be looking the other way, and that may create maybe small suspicion. That can also create some problems. I'm just speaking from a perspective that you may understand, because this is one of the most impressive groups I've seen in Providence so far. You may understand, but I'm just saying these are things that may be unspoken or nobody may be talking about. But everything about eye contact may not be Western. Somebody may avoid eye contact, that doesn't mean they are disrespectful or they are suspicious or they are hiding something. They may be shaking, but that doesn't mean they are doing something. Currently, when I'm driving, when I'm at the office, sometimes I stay office very late, because after work, then that's where I do other stuff, like writing and other stuff. When I stay late. When it gets dark, my wife doesn't let me drive by myself. She has to come pick me up because of one reason. A black male driving in America at night. She doesn't want her children to grow up, her two boys to grow up without their father, because that's what we see in the news. And of course, we already have the past trauma with police. That is not what you guys are trained to. That's what you guys are. So the point of demonizing police or creating that distance shouldn't exist. I think what should exist is the communication between us, so that that divide between like us and them doesn't happen. But the fear is real. The woman drives, no matter how late comes to the office, make sure I park somewhere, we go to the mosque, park my car. Fair is safe, and then we drive it, so she drives. It's safer for a black woman to drive in America at night than a black male. That shouldn't happen. Nobody should live like that, because this is a great country. I was not safe in the country of my birth. I came to the country of my choice, and I'm safer here. I'm free here. But there are things that we must recognize that exist, that we must tackle, that we must face. A few things happened. Yesterday I was having a conversation with United others, my colleagues at the Refugee Center. Somebody said, how can somebody take a taser? You've been over 20 years, I think 25 years experience in the police. Take a taser and shoot somebody impulsively and say it's a mistake, you thought that's a gun. How can that happen? So this was like me playing the devil's advocate. I said, it is possible. If you put 100 black people here, especially black males, so this thing, all this conversation is not about black male, but this is the nuance that we must deal with. If you put 100 black males in this room, you tell them that police officer in Minnesota, she did this deliberately, she just wanted to kill him. Probably all of them will say, yes, that was deliberate. That was not a mistake, because it's natural, it has happened before and before. But I played the devil's advocate. I said night. I think night will come. I said night. What are the odds that these people are conditioned to the extent, they are conditioned to fear us to the extent that she really feared. She thought it's a gun. She just impulsively acted because she fears us. She was afraid. She thought she was just tasing the person and shot him to death. So why would there be fear? Why would somebody be conditioned to fear somebody who is of less power? You have more power, you have a gun. Why would you be conditioned to fear somebody to that extent? There shouldn't be. My point is that should not exist. And this is somebody who is saying this. Me, 5 years ago, you will not bring me to this room. I will not walk in because I'm scared. I am afraid of police. I'm afraid of. When I came to the US 14 years ago, actually May was my 14th anniversary. I wouldn't sleep because I was living next to Elmwood. There is high level of police there. I still cannot comprehend why do we have more police presence in the Elmwood area, yet more crime there. You go to the east side, or maybe some places in Mount Elmwood, you just don't see any police presence, but less crime is reported. But Elmwood is a lot of siren going off. For somebody who was highly traumatized like me then, when I hear this siren, I go to the window and spend almost all night just watching to see the police siren going off, going down, going back and forth. I think there's an emergency. It looks like, it reminds me like a war situation. What is going on? And one of my roommates was from Ethiopia. He used to be a general in Ethiopia. He told me, no, this is normal. It's go to sleep, man. You don't have to worry about this. Because it was for me, I was enjoying being a spectator watching Elmwood Avenue at night, because it was just so fascinating seeing all that noise, police going around, even though there was high crime. And I remember I was so fearful of police that one day I was going to walk, I mistakenly dropped a piece of paper. When I remembered I had gone so far, I had to run back and pick it up because I was told if you litter the streets, you'll be arrested. I don't know whether that was true or not, but I'll still not do it. I don't want to litter the streets. You'll be arrested. That is the last thing I wanted. I fled so many countries. I had so much trouble. I was tortured by police in my country. The last thing I wanted in America was to run into trouble with police, because if I have problem in America, where am I going? Probably to another planet Mars. So no, this was the last destination. I wasn't going anywhere. So I avoided police as much as possible. But it became extreme avoidance. I was paranoid when I see a police officer patrolling somewhere or the car, I'll run to the other direction. I was literally like actively running away from police. I see them, I run this way. Somebody noticed, one of the refugees who were here before noticed, they said, oh man, these people will help you. You lost, you ask them, they'll give you direction. I couldn't comprehend why somebody would even say that to me. People who tortured me, people who used gun butts to hit me, imprison me, chase me with AK-47 out of my country. People who look like them actually walking with pistols everywhere around the streets, sirens, and telling me they'll give me directions. Are you serious? So I couldn't believe that. I just could not believe that. But eventually it started easing up. I started getting the courage a little bit, like slowly and slowly. But I am still fearful. Even now, I may recognize everybody here in the streets when you go to, when you eventually start walking in your different places. But when I see you, even if I recognize you, I'll still be scared. I will still be fearful. And I'm not doing anything wrong. I may have rolled at the stop sign. I think a lot of people do that. So you may give me a ticket or warning. I may have rolled, but I don't think I'm doing any crime that will warrant me to be scared. But I'm still scared. I'm scared. Yeah, so I think I should come to a complete stop, right? I should come to a complete stop at the point. But sometimes I think some people do that. I doubt I do that, but it may be. But just the point is, I don't think I'm doing anything that I should be shaking for, I should be scared for, I should be avoiding police. You see me, I'm shaking. Sometimes you stop somebody from my culture, for instance, or somebody who has experienced war or problems like me. You tell them to raise their hands up. The first thing that can happen as a psychologist, that the first thing that, from a psychological perspective, the first thing that people may think of is execution, because they have gone through it or they've seen it. Some literally escape execution. The first person, one of my first roommates was a Liberian refugee. His hand was chopped. Almost everything was one ear, one everything. They chopped, they cut everything. They lined up everybody in his family, 19 people. He was the only one that survived. And the reason why he survived was because he was sent as a messenger. They cut him so that when the government sees him, the rebels wanted him to see. Wanted the government soldiers to see him, to see that, okay, this is the message, this is what we did in the village. But they killed everybody, his wife, his children, everybody, except him. And they just cut one of every two things that he had. One hand, one ear, one everything. When I came, he was putting on a jacket and he was hiding things. He was going through that trauma, literally hiding something that he shouldn't be ashamed of. So, if somebody like that, you stop him and say, raise your hands up, he will take off. Literally, he will take off. He will run because he's thinking about execution or something that happened. Or somebody like me being grabbed by a group of over 20 soldiers, tortured. They played games with me. They would raise me up, throw me in the air. When I'm coming, they'll use them. Their books, these military books, they're kicking and using the gun butts. And my only crime as a 21-year-old reporter, young reporter, just trying to naively thinking I'm courageous, investigating the president or writing things that he didn't want to write. He didn't want me to write as a young reporter in the time. So those are things that can create problems. I'm just saying that you will have challenges out there in the streets because you're walking, especially Providence is one of the most diverse cities you will live in. You will have challenges. You may be fearful of members of the community. They will also be fearful of you. There will be a big gap. And one thing you should remember is that you're coming from a top-down model. You have more power than them. You have a gun. Some of you may be of different race. Some of you may not even live in their cities. You may not live their experiences. And those are all things that you have to be ready to encounter. It's not easy work. Personally, I will never, ever antagonize police because I know the great work that is happening. But there are certain things that happen that the divide and the suspicion will always be there. But we can break it by having communications, bridging the gap. I mean, if you see a police officer, especially somebody who looks like he's been experienced for a long time, calling black kids, they're all animals, I saw the video. This literally happened like 1-2 weeks ago. That is scary. They are all animals. You see them spray But I prefer the spray, even though it's scary to see kids being sprayed than a gun. Imagine if that was gunshots killing those people. Your job is not easy. You're protecting us. You out there at all hours, at emergencies. Even when I watch a show, a TV show, when I see police breaking into somebody's place, I get scared. I say, are they going to face with bullets? You don't know what you're facing. So that is understandable. But then you just have to continuously work to meet some of these differences, some of these challenges that people go through. And my community, which is the refugee community, is not an ethnic group. Currently at the Refugee Dream Center, we just had the World Refugee Day celebration. 31 flags. The 31st flag was the flag of the US that were hosted around. Those are the countries that are represented that have at least one clan being served at the center. So that is like the mini United Nations. It's not an ethnic group. They are black, white, everybody. People from different identities, from different countries of origin, different languages. We have, within our 5 case managers, we speak about 20 languages. So it's everybody. And this means different cultures. One thing we have in common with everybody and their unique experience, one thing we have in common is that all these people have experienced high levels of trauma, extreme levels of trauma. And that is where some of the suspicion and extreme fear, sometimes one can even say threat of law enforcement can come from, because something similar happened to them. So there's something like in psychology called projective identification. So you see somebody, you project it, you see, okay, the police officer tortured me or killed my brother in my presence, I escaped. I don't want to do anything with police. So literally, some of these things happen. It's very painful to go around and literally this person I'm talking to, they hate me. But that is not, it's not your role to fight back. You're there to help protect them. I mean, at some point, that role can be that bridge can be built to reduce that fear, that hate and suspicion. I cannot say I hated police, but I was extremely fearful. I told you to this day. I was joking when I started. I'm scared of it. I think to a certain extent until now, I was extremely fearful. And I can tell you there are certain individuals, they hate police, there are certain police, they do extremely bad things. Especially this interaction between police white, police male, and black male. I just don't know what that is going on. I mean, to be fair to even black women to a certain extent, certain things that they're not telling others, I don't know. I really don't care about the judicial process of it. What I care about is what happened. Something happened, somebody shot somebody, and somebody died, and there was supposed to be some sort of protection. And this person is fearful, this person is fearful. It cannot be policing. Policing should be something meaningful, something not scary, something that is protected. So I think that is where we should all come together to work and see how we can help. Just quick things about certain cultural variations that we should understand. If you are called, for instance, with a West African family, let's say maybe somebody in the second floor calls and says, there is domestic violence in this family. There may not be domestic violence. In my culture, for instance, in West Africa, especially West Africa, people talk loud, very, very loud. Because I think at some point, maybe during colonialism, they destroyed the writings. The colonials came and destroyed all the writings, the people didn't have any form of writing. The only way of communication was through oral histories or griots, people who will go around the town and just announce by their voice, no microphone, nothing. So voice was something that people used a lot. Even if a couple is chatting in their living room, you literally think they're fighting. And they'll talk at the same time, and they'll talk and each of them will try to speak louder than the other. So at many instances, people will call, the neighbors may call and say there's disturbance, these people, I think they're fighting. Believe me, there are many domestic violence. We had a group from Brown who I think had some sort of those challenges. Kids were tutoring and then eventually started calling sometimes saying, oh, there's domestic violence in the family, but they didn't know. All they did was to learn the colleges. There is not domestic violence. So that's some of the things I think police should also understand. You walk in and think somebody, maybe husband is beating wife or wife is beating husband, but they may just have been having the best time of their life. The other thing is parties. If you observe, for instance, a lot of immigrants especially from Africa, I'm speaking from that perspective, but when they own homes, the basement is where they'll spend a lot of money. Especially single family homes, they'll spend a lot of money in the basement. They'll create a small bar and they will fix it very nice with the, how they call them, the skylights, the small lights in the ceiling, skylights, they'll build those very nice. It will look like a small club in the basement. And they will party, every Friday, Saturday, they will party until 5 a.m., 6 a.m., literally 6 a.m. And I mean, so those are things that you may encounter. So it's cultural, but is it acceptable? If it is not acceptable, maybe you'll still know how to interact with them to see how you can minimize the disturbance or that extreme level. I thought maybe 2 a.m. is the deadline, I'm not sure. But I'm just telling you this is a reality that you may encounter in the communities because of that culture. In our communities, people come late. If you say the party starts at midnight, people will come at 2 a.m. So, so that means the party ends at 6 a.m. So those are things that you will experience. You know, it's not basically. My point is, I'm on your side in this little specific point because it's not easy. The work you are doing is not easy. My wife, but actually, she was very interested in police at some point. See, for some reason, maybe she wanted to use that for me to be scared of police. But then in 2016, she was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, so she couldn't do that anymore. So, but those are some of the things that we experience, we see all the time for people to understand that these things may happen. And sometimes certain cultures, they may not want to talk to a black police officer. For instance, like you, for instance, I'm sorry to point you out. Your complexion looks very much like mine. Some cultures, you may walk in, let's say there's domestic violence, the male, because you are a male like me, I would want to talk exactly to you. I don't want to talk to him because I think, oh, he's an outsider, I don't want him to know my business. There's a lot of stigma in the community. There's a lot of stigma, especially certain Muslim cultures. I'm a Muslim, so I can speak from that perspective. A lot of Muslim communities, for instance, you cannot even talk with wife without the husband's presence or permission. You understand? There's an extreme level of conservative approaches. In some African cultures, because of the level of stigma, there's high level of pride, especially in the male gender. There's the level of pride is I prefer talking to a man like me, but also a man from my culture, so that he knows my business, he will understand me. Or even if it's not from my culture, but he looks like me, or he is or not a female officer, I may not want him to talk to me. You understand? Or not a white male officer. But sometimes in the same culture, in the same community, you will see that you'll come to me, I don't want to talk to you, I want to talk to him. I want to talk to him because I don't want somebody who looks like me to know about my business. I want outsiders to know, and it stops there, so I don't want anybody in my community or somebody who looks like me to know. So you just cannot predict. It's just a difficult work. I'm just on your side in this sense that it's difficult. You just cannot guess. It has to be the parents all the time and interact. We have a few problems with our youth. I'm glad we have come with our youth coordinator today. He's hearing, so maybe we can pick up something or maybe meet some people or recognize some people that they can invite to our youth programs, mentoring programs eventually in the future. But when George Floyd was killed, there were a lot of riots. In Providence, we had riots too. One of our kids, I didn't even know until later because I traveled to Gambia and then came back, and luckily there's no dictatorship there now. So when I came back, I asked, for some reason I asked for this kid one day. They said, no, it's in their move. I said, what happened? They said, he was part of the riots and they went and broke some stuff downtown. Broke stuff. He didn't even know the kids he was moving with. He's just peer pressure from his street. He saw kids going to riot, he joined them, and they started breaking classes. The FBI or maybe the Providence police, but some law enforcement, I think the FBI came to their house, arrested him, and ran into a lot of trouble. I think luckily because he's juvenile like 15, 16, they put a bracelet on his ankle. He just went through so much trouble. And innocently, this kid didn't even know what he was doing. He didn't even know the kids he was going with. He just thought he'd school to go and do something like that. Doesn't even know what is a crime and what is not a crime. And of course, I know the cliche, ignorance of the law is not excuse. But this is some of the things that a lot of immigrant kids, especially refugee kids, go through. So I mean, your engagement, especially this community policing, getting involved, participating in mentoring for you, will be incredibly helpful. Because when a kid comes to the US, especially a refugee kid, I'm emphasizing refugee kids And in no way this minimizes immigrants or anybody else, but refugees are the only group that comes in without preparation. They are not prepared to come to the US. Bam, some guns come to the village, shoot, everybody is dead, 2, 3 people escape, go to another country, live in a camp for 15 years, then the next moment the US, out of generosity, comes in and picks in maybe 10, 15 of them from that camp and bring them here. You are not prepared. It's like a continuous running battle in your life. And then you come, personally, imagine I was a reporter, I could read and write English. I didn't know Rhode Island until a day before my arrival. One day before my arrival. Had no idea what Rhode Island was. Actually, I thought it's an island, they're taking me to an island. I was so upset with the embassy because I was just so traumatized and suspicious and paranoid about everything. I said, well, the embassy were so nice. They said, you are going to help me, they're taking me to America. How comes they're taking me to an island and nobody ever told me about that? I wanted to take off. Luckily, the case manager at IOM, which is the International Organization for Migration, that does the travel for refugees, the guy noticed that this guy would take off. Now, I was going to just disappear because I felt betrayed. And even though that was my last hope, the American embassy, amazing, full staff that were really amazing, we are working on my case. All of a sudden, this is the only hope, and they betrayed me too, they take me to an island. This is supposedly a reporter who should have known. Imagine most refugees don't read and write, even in their own languages, they don't read and write. You come in here, you are not prepared to travel. So every day you are encountering something that you are not prepared for. You are not ready for it. You have no idea what you are encountering. You go to a workplace, you are 5 minutes late, you high-five your boss that runs you into trouble. You think you are forcing yourself to be cool, to belong. They go to the schools, especially the youth, because they are not prepared. Now they want to be cool. They force their accent because the kids laugh at their accent. The food, they stop eating their food. They go to riot, they join them, they overdo actually. They break things. Literally, they do everything to belong, because it's now an issue of wanting to belong. It's a belonging thing. And you see, in this world, everything is about belonging. That's what causes the good and the bad. Wanting to belong. People join camps, people join terrorist groups, everything because they want to belong. You understand? So this is some of the things that I think it will be extremely helpful for you to understand that the biggest, if you come to the refugee community, the immigrant community, people from everywhere, the mosque, anywhere you come in, you will realize that the biggest challenge is the young people. And that's where actually, that the biggest need would be you to help us, to break that. Our approach at the Refugee Dream Center, we are not antagonistic to police. Our mission is both advocacy and direct services, but we are not antagonistic to police, we are not antagonistic to any politician, we are not activists. We don't have that kind of, how do we call it, that activist approach. We do advocacy, but we don't want to antagonize anybody. When there's a problem, we talk about it. When there's a problem, we talk about the building that bridge, so that we can bring the good from every side to help each other. So I just wanted to highlight that about the youth. And thank you so much for your attention, and hope we have maybe a few questions before we end in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Yes.
Sir, let's say you go for a call for domestic violence, and in certain religions, like you said, you have to speak to the husband first before talking to the wife. How do you approach that in a nice way, like to talk to the wife?
Now, honestly, I've seen a lot of interactions with police, but police are very polite usually. I think you just have to balance it. And sometimes some Muslims do not see the veil. They're not, like my wife, you don't know whether she was born in America or not, because she doesn't have the veil. But she's a Muslim, and I don't think she cares whether